All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're digging into a pretty challenging analysis out of Meghalaya. It asks a really fundamental question about democracy, which is what's the responsibility of the people who know better? We're going to be talking about electoral accountability, but from the angle of those who choose to stay silent. And this quote, it's the heart of the whole argument. It doesn't treat silence as just nothing. It frames it as an active force, something that literally acts like a shield protecting corruption. So according to this analysis, the real problem isn't just what's being done wrong, it's what's not being said by the very people who should know better. So this is the big question the source wants us to wrestle with. I mean, it's a pretty bold idea, right? What if being apathetic isn't just a personal choice? What if it's an act that actually actively poisons the democratic process itself? And that leads us to what the source calls a paradox. And it's a huge irony, really. The very people who are the most equipped to demand accountability, the educated, are often the ones who say the least. It's a silence that comes from a complicated place. Maybe it's cynicism, maybe it's convenience, or heck, maybe it's even fear. This slide just lays out that paradox so clearly. On one side, you've got all the tools you could ever need: information, knowledge of the law, a platform to actually speak from. And on the other side, the choice is often silence. The source argues this isn't just a missed opportunity. It's a total breakdown of civic duty, where the comfort of not getting involved starts to outweigh the responsibility to speak up. And we're not talking about some vague, faceless group here. The source gets really specific, pointing directly at the pillars of our society: teachers, who shape young minds; lawyers, who know the ins and outs of the law; journalists, whose whole job is to hold power accountable; and religious and community leaders, who are supposed to be our moral compass. These are the people whose voices carry so much weight, and their silence, well, it leaves a huge void. Okay, so what happens when these influential groups just stay quiet? This next part explores the direct fallout, and it all starts with a very powerful idea. Silence is never neutral. This really says it all, doesn't it? Silence isn't passive, it has weight. By choosing not to speak out against something, you are by default allowing it to continue completely unchallenged. So, who benefits from all this inaction? The status quo. If a system is broken or corrupt, silence is its absolute best friend. It means no pressure, no scrutiny, and zero demand for change. It's basically an endorsement of the way things are. And the damage just spreads like a ripple effect. There's that protective blanket for corruption again, but look at the rest. It paralyzes accountability because nobody's demanding it. It makes official bodies weaker because they rely on public pressure to act. And maybe the most insidious part of all, it lowers the moral bar for everyone else. Okay, so this is where things get personal. The source stops being this broad analysis and turns the lens directly on the individual. It stops explaining and starts asking. So this is a moment for some pretty serious self-reflection. And here's the first challenge, aimed right at anyone with a bit of privilege or security. Are you using your voice to demand better? Or are you just staying silent, telling yourself that, nothing will change anyway? Then the source asks us to look around. I mean, think about it. In all the public speeches you've heard from community leaders, how often do you hear a direct, no-nonsense condemnation of electoral corruption? The source suggests it's a lot rarer than it should be. And what about the media? Is election coverage a real investigation into misconduct and the power of money? Or is it just a horse race, obsessed with polls and who's ahead, while totally ignoring the integrity of the process itself? It's a huge question about the media's real role in a democracy. This next one is incredibly powerful. The source is asking us to rethink who's really responsible here. If the people who are supposed to set the standard, the educators, the leaders, are staying silent, can we honestly put all the blame on a poor voter who takes some money out of desperation? It's a profound moral challenge. But look, the source doesn't just leave us hanging with all these tough questions. It also offers a path forward, a challenge to move from just being a passive observer to actually getting involved. And it's broken down into 3 simple, totally actionable steps. This isn't about trying to overthrow the system overnight. It's about starting with what is right in front of you, examining, asking, and talking. So step 1 is to just look closer at your own community. Pay attention to what's being said and, just as importantly, what's not being said by your local media, by religious groups, by schools. Are they tackling these tough issues head on, or are they kind of just avoiding them? Then, step 2 turns that critical eye inward. It asks you to take an honest look at yourself. And this isn't meant to make you feel guilty. It's about seeing the gap between what you believe and what you do. Have you ever taken even one tiny, concrete step? And finally, step 3 is about bringing this whole internal conversation out into the open. Talk to your friends, your colleagues. What are the real barriers holding us back? Is it fear of what might happen, a deep sense of cynicism, or is it honestly just more convenient to stay silent? Understanding the why is the only way we can start to change the behavior. And this really lands on one of the source's most crucial points. Vague language from our leaders is not harmless. It actively chips away at our standards. When clarity and courage are missing at the top, it gives everyone else permission to lower their own expectations of what's right. So we'll end with this final, powerful question from the source. It frames the silence of today not just in terms of the next election, but in the context of your own legacy. It's a challenge to think about the story you'll tell the next generation, about the role you chose to play. Were you a quiet watcher, or were you someone who tried? That's a question worth thinking about long after this is over.